Hello, everybody. Welcome to another broadcast from the training, learning, and development community. Happy Friday to you. That's what somebody at my day job continues to call it, Friday. So I'm going to just carry that on here. Wow, we have a good group in here. We have some experts in here too. This is good. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining. Today, we've got a community discussion on kind of a clickbaity title, and I'll sort of explain why I think it's a little clickbaity. But we're talking about learning in the flow of work, fad or trend. And as I normally do for these community discussions, I would love to have any guests on. And I see oh my gosh, Ray's here. So Ray, if you want to jump on screen with me, I would love it. Kristen, wow, we haven't seen you in a while. So glad that you're in. Josh, nice to see you. Kim, Don, Christiana, Carlita, Darcy, Peacock's here. Melissa, Julia, thanks for joining. So, clickbaity, fad or trend, learning in the flow of work. I sort of, the reason I named it that is because once I started doing research about the topic, I felt like I was just running into a lot of gimmicky stuff. And I did see something about workflow learning and learning in the flow of work where it talked about it was a fad until we could find more ways to measure learning in the flow of work. And part of that also is that when I was researching it, I've been familiar with the terminology for years, right? Of learning in the flow of work. I felt like it's just been around for a while, but for some reason it seemed like, according to my research, when Josh Bersin published an article about it a couple of years ago, and he called it learning in the flow of work and sort of coined the term, then of course there were like a dozen plus blogs that all of a sudden start, sort of repeating what he said in his blog. And then it kind of just became a thing for a little while. It seemed like there was a lot of traffic about it, but it's a term that has been kind of been around for a while. And I'm really, really curious about it. The reason why I picked the topic was Jack Pierce had posted that he wanted to discuss it in the feedback tool that we've been using for TLDC. That's at feedback.thetldc.com. Check it out if you haven't already. Post some topics. Would love to use you to build content here. But and I don't see Jack. We had talked about having him come on screen, but I'm not seeing him in the audience right now. But and so that's the reason why we're talking about learning in the flow of work. And there are people that I ran into online because I was researching the topic, like Ray, who is here now. And he'd love to join in video when appropriate. It's appropriate for you to be in video this entire time, Ray. So I'm just gonna invite you in because there's nothing like having two handsome Filipino men on screen on a Friday, right? I hope that's okay. Jack is here. Okay, then I'm gonna bring you in too, Jack. Kristen. Come on, if you'd like. There's Ray. Hey, Ray.
Hey, two Filipino men.
Yeah.
Hi, Luis. Hi, everyone.
Nice to have you on screen. I just invited Jack on. Let's see.
I don't have my bow tie today. That's okay. It's just spontaneous, right?
Okay. That's okay. Hey, Ray, do me a favor. Check to see if you've got me open in another tab. I'm hearing a little bit of echo.
Oh, yeah, hearing echo. Okay. How about that? It's better?
Check it out. I still hear it a little bit.
Hold on, I'm gonna change.
If I'm on another tab or if something else is on your.
I'm gonna use my head.
Okay.
We'll turn again.
Excellent. Melissa's saying, Ray, that we're both very handsome but still echoey. Thank you, Melissa.
There you go. How is this?
Yeah, that's better. Much better. Thank you.
Okay. So I just.
Okay, everybody. So I have a few polls that are set up, and so check those out. Fill out the poll if you want. And I don't have a ton of questions. I sort of was hoping that we really could make this more of a discussion. If anybody else wants to jump in, please let me know. I'd love to have you on screen as well. Ray, you are you are very, very familiar with workflow learning, learning in the flow of work. I know you've been covering this stuff for years. And I know that for myself, back when I was at the Guild, we had sort of put a lot of emphasis on performance support for a while. And that's when I got familiar with learning in the flow of work. So I know that you'll be able to offer some great insight into what we're going to be discussing today. And so the way that I have community discussions usually formatted is I just kind of start things off with a few different questions that are in the Ask a Question area. And then I hope that some of the folks that are joining us might have other questions that they can add to it too. So since you're now a guest on this broadcast, Ray, I'm going to start with you with some of these questions. Okay, so let's just start out with the big one. Okay. Ray, is learning in the flow of work a fad or a trend? Or neither, and why?
You can hear me, right? So
I can hear you.
Yeah. Neckties used to come today is very thin neckties. Years ago, it was very big, and then so all of these things come around over time. My thought has been go deeper than the term itself. Go deeper than the word fad or fashion. And it was really meaningful in design. So my answer is that it's always been here. The same thing with microlearning, it's always been here. But at a certain point in time in our economy, in our environment, it sort of shines into it. So today, the lights are shining on workflow learning, mainly because companies want to flatten the distance between learning and application at work. That's just, we've always been wanting to do this, but today there's more demand in doing it. So they want it together to learning in flow of work. I mean, it's nothing different than when you develop an e-learning. It's the same thing, but this one is just flatten it together. So it's not a fad, it's not a something that can stay permanently, but it's just reality with just a new terminology, right?
Yeah, love it, Ray. Thank you. And it aligns with what Christiana's saying in the QA. It's just life, like learning in the flow of work. And that's really where I sort of like sit with it, because I know for myself, and I do like a variety of things kind of, just with TLDC and all the other work that I do, I'm constantly learning in the flow of work. And, I use YouTube, I use a variety of other resources to kind of help me be able to complete certain tasks. I mean, I can't even tell you, I do a lot of work within the Salesforce Marketing Cloud now, and I am constantly looking for resources to complete certain tasks that I have to do that Salesforce Marketing Cloud throws at me. And that is all learning in the flow of work. And so, but, and I have this crazy question, Ray. I mean, how do you measure that stuff? That's the one thing for me that, there you go.
Very interesting. Let me try to give you a short answer to that, a real case study. So what I did was, we have airplane mechanics, about 150 of them. So we told them that right after they do a troubleshooting, they have a problem with a certain door. They do a troubleshooting, they learn something very quickly. While they're doing that, they quickly report the impact of the fix that they were doing. Guess what happened? They were able to approximately say, we saved 2 hours, we saved 3 hours, we saved spare parts, we saved all of that. So my observation in my own small world is that the question of ROI is, for me, really irrelevant from a big picture, because accountants need that, the CEO needs it, but from a smaller flow of work, the question should be, can we help the learners understand that their learning has an impact? And the only way to do that is right after they apply something at work, you ask them whether it showed an impact.
Wow. Okay, so it necessitates that type of a, reporting change to be able to actually make it measurable. And wait, so this sort of case study that you mentioned, is that something that you experienced firsthand? Was it something that you were a project that you were part of?
Right. Yeah. I mean, and this is the model I'm working in right now. By the way, there's really nothing different about doing an e-learning on this, except that when you're teaching somebody a solution, Don't wait until they come up with a smiley sheet, because all of those smiley sheet, all of those things are irrelevant to the worker. They don't really care. You care, they don't. What they care is whether the answer they tried actually worked. And you capture that, and nothing to be fancy about it. You can just have a simple form and come on rating, efficiency high, spare part savings high, and that's what you capture. But by the way, there's no scientific thing to this, because I don't want our science guys in the world of learning science to say, oh, there's no science. No, what you want to do is to capture an approximation of what is the impact of their solution.
Wow, I love it, Ray. I love it. Let me get into the comments here, because I want to mention some of these things for the folks that are listening on the podcast. See, Kristen, she posted a webinar, Ray's Hyperstories webinar. Looks like there's a link there, and I'm going to, I'll put that in the resources so we can get you some registrations for that webinar, Ray. Kim saying, I think learning in the flow of work gave a name to something we've all done and used for ages. Oh, totally agree. In my opinion, giving a name to something can make it easier to get a handle on the concept. Yes. Let's see, Jack, I'll add you in a second. Let me get through some of these comments. Kristen saying, I like to call out whether the term makes sense. It makes it sound like our goal is learning, but our goal is for people to be able to do their work as well as possible.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yep.
And let's see, Darcy is saying here, I found the concept is useful when talking with C-suite folks or other leaders in the org who think learning is just courses plus quizzes, easy to help them visualize in the flow of work. So maybe it's not a novel concept, but still helpful to get our point across. Yes, that is very astute, Darcy. I love it. Let's see. Kim saying different jobs need different types of resources for the flow of their work online. Searches, printed job ads, smartphone apps, flexible to the job equals key, IMO. Thank you. Yes. Excellent. All right. Let me get to another question here. Here's one that was voted up kind of highly. Do you design micro-learning? And if so, is it meant for learning in the flow of work? And so this is kind of meant, of course, for the audience. But what do you say about that, Ray? The relationship between micro-learning and workflow learning, how much of it do you think is actually designed specifically for workflow learning?
A good question. 10 years ago, I wrote a book on micro-learning. It took about 10 years for people to understand what it is. Because I could not comprehend studying 3 hours courses online, because people don't behave that way. And then I just recently wrote a book on workflow learning. Workflow learning is only feasible when there's micro-learning. They really go hand in hand, because while you're trying to fix something, you're not standing up beside the equipment and spending an hour learning. No, you need instant answers, micro-learning, in order to fix the problem. So they really go together. And the idea that what Kim mentioned about articulation of a title, micro-learning and workflow learning, we just have no way, but we have to attempt to articulate a title, because how else can we explain that, right? So there's no confusion with this title, but they're together, Luis. Micro-learning and workflow learning are really together, working together to get the same outcome.
I love it. So, and just so incredibly valuable in today's world, especially. And I'd like to ask you about that, Ray, and also the audience. What do you guys think about the impact the pandemic has had on learning in the flow of work and micro-learning?
Yeah, very, very interesting, if I will chime into that. There's a study made by Harvard Publishing that more and more people are learning or accessing knowledge by searching. 90% of workers search a solution. 10% of them attend a class. You can imagine that, right? Now, this has gotten worse during the pandemic because people really hate attending classes. And not to be critical about classroom, it's just irrelevant by nature. Classroom training, virtual seminars are irrelevant by nature because it's very far away from work. So the pandemic, two things had happened in my observation. Number one, it just allows people to train themselves. And by the way, the essence of workflow learning, from the way I understand it in my research, is separate from performance support. Performance support offers a solution. Workflow learning is understanding that people are figuring it out already. People are training themselves. People are figuring it out themselves. So the pandemic sort of accelerated that. that people have to work in the flow of work. Nothing new with this, nothing new. It's been there, but it's just accelerated, and it's happening all over the place. And the final thought on that is, by learning by yourself, you are more passionate learning on the things that's passionate to you, rather than learning to attempt Safety 101. Who cares what Safety 101, right? But my passion, I'm able to follow.
Yes, yes, yes. Kirsten is saying, totally anecdotally, I used to do a lot of browsing of formal training options or taking e-learning around 3 p.m. when my brain was done with tasks for the day, but I couldn't actually leave the office. I think because we're competing with more things, we have to make our solutions more relevant and timely.
Yeah.
That is very, very, yeah, I am in the same boat, Kristen. Totally.
Right. Comment to Kristen, Luis, is this. We still think of learning in the workflow as content. Be forewarned, the role of content is diminishing in the way we understand it to be. In workflow learning, it starts with the people already trying to fix a problem. So whatever you give them has to be adjusted to that so that they can use it. So it becomes relevant right then and there. Now this connects to what Kim has asked a question. Performance support, software, like you're doing a workflow in the learning software or performance support are great tools, but they are there to support the worker figuring out how to solve a problem. And we haven't changed our instruction mentality. We still feel that even the micro-learning, I have a favorite leadership development program, it's 3 hours, I just need to chop them into 2 minutes each. But that's not micro-learning. Getting away, letting go with our love of content and shifting our love to helping the worker solve problems.
Nice. All right. So does that mean that instructional designers or learning experience designers, anybody who builds like training solutions, they should be shifting their thinking altogether? Is this like sort of a massive change in how people should be looking at how they do their jobs?
Yeah, well, I don't mean to monopolize it, but Luis, but quick answer to that so they can get the group comment. I think that there will always be a need for formal learning.
Yeah.
And if we don't really change ourselves, by the way, this job is going to disappear very soon, right? I'm saying that there's lesser and lesser and lesser instructional designer needed. And who's doing the job? Anybody outside the L&D who can develop content, they develop it quickly, right? Mm-hmm. So the invitation, therefore, is to look at your content and say, I have a contribution to do, but that content must be adjusted very, very quickly, developed only on the basis of problems
right.
that workers are seeing. Not from your point of view. Mm-hmm. Never from your point of view, which is nothing new, right, Luis? We've always been trained to go back out there, but 99% of our instructional designers don't go back out there. They just get the PowerPoint and produce a PowerPoint 1,000 pages, which like by the time it's finished is irrelevant. I'm like this, by the way, everyone. You know me, I'm like very blatant, and you might throw tomatoes in my face, but that's okay.
No, this is great. This is great. I want to say, Kim is actually asking, Ray, would you say that using online help for software would be workflow learning?
Yeah, that is not workflow learning in itself, Kim. The tool is not the workflow learning. The workflow learning is people using the tool to solve a problem. And this is where's the big confusion, because the focus, you heard of the phenomenon called the Jiffy Lube effect? Jiffy Lube effect. I borrowed this from a friend of mine. Everybody in the world, including ourselves, including learning, we want to put our car, have a quick change, and get out of there. We're so tools-oriented, forgetting that there are multiple tools that can help a worker. So our focus must be understanding how is the worker fixing the job, and what can I offer them? So, in a way, that is not workflow learning in itself, Ken. It is a resource that can be injected in the workflow where the learner is working on solving problems.
Nice. Very nice. Wow. Ray, you're spitting some fire here. I'm like having to my brain is spinning. I can't focus on what I have to do here as a moderator because I'm thinking so much about these concepts. Let's see. Let me ask. Okay, so I want to remind folks I do have 3 poll questions. If you want to fill them out, let's see. What are we looking at right now? Asking the audience, are you responsible for building any workflow learning? We've got everybody says yes. It's just 100% so far. Everyone is responsible for building workflow audience. Everyone who's filled out the poll anyway. And then, do you think the pandemic has accelerated the need for workflow learning? 72% said yes. And that was about almost 30% say no. And then this was an interesting statement that I had heard in an interview with Conrad Gottfredson, who is, absolutely brilliant when it comes to performance support. And he was talking about workflow learning, and he actually said, you have to stop work to learn. And I asked, do you agree with this statement? And only one said yes, and then the rest said no. So I find that very interesting. And I'm going to link to that podcast too, just because Con is a great character to know, and he's got some incredible things to say about this particular topic. Now, I was wondering specifically about instructional designers when I came up with this question, Ray, but how can instructional designers experience learning in the flow of work? Yeah. And I'm just wondering about this audience's experience, and even yours, Ray.
Yeah, very, very interesting. If you go to the roots of instructional design, it is designing knowledge so that people can use it. That's really what it is. That's the science of it. But after 100 years, we're now so in love with content, we forget the learner, right? So go back to the basics. It's the same instructional design. Just shift your focus to what's going on in the workplace. Understand where the worker is, with their nature of their problems, and design for that. Don't design for instruction, because instruction, my humble opinion, is irrelevant the following day. When I tell you to do something today, tomorrow it's gone. I don't remember it. So you ask the learner, you ask the worker, you ask your stakeholders to simply see what problems are you trying to solve. And therefore, can I show you something? Can I help you something? Fix that in a very simple, direct to the point approach, rather than be enamored with huge production of content and get stuck with it. After 6 months, not able to finish the e-learning course, you get fired, right? Because it hasn't been finished. So that's my look at it. It's nothing new. It's the same thing. Just go back to the roots of instructional design, which is designing for the workers, and go back because the workers are now in a new environment.
I like it. Thank you, Ray. I'm going to read what Julia has posted here in the comments. She's saying, learning as quickly as I can. I find I get far better information directly from the engineers. Yes, we are together in the office. Yep. Searching for more information is critical to filling the gaps. Their vocabulary is new to me. And I have to be very cautious in which online resources I choose, because there is poor information and misinformation on tech security. That is a really, really good point. And I think that's, and that's another part of, I think, the conundrum as well, is just what resources do you choose to be able to provide solutions, right? All of a sudden, if you're designing this stuff, you almost have to become like this instant SME and everything. And that in itself is a huge, huge challenge.
Yeah, you led a very interesting point here. Content will always be changing on the context of the worker. So anybody can almost produce content, okay? Instructional design wants to make it easier, lighter, entertaining, engaging, make sure that they remember it. So my proposal to you and to my clients has always been this: help the learners try to have better thinking processes. So workflow learning for me is not about content, it's about helping them out to think better, how to make decisions, how to do a simple rule, Luis, like pros and cons. Evaluate the pros and cons, evaluate the consequences of your action. How do you contribute, and how do you evaluate the veracity and the validity of the content? That's the kind of skill we need to help the workers in order that they can get information and knowledge reliably. Because if we are in a production process, I am going to tell you that production process will never be enough. And by tomorrow, that content is irrelevant. What is important is that to help the workers and the learners begin to think, I am fixing something in the workflow, I am doing work, how do I make it a better decision to find the answer, test it, apply it, validate it, so that I can get the answers right. So that's my definition of workflow learning. helping the learners to think better in the process of doing work along the way they learn.
Wow, Ray, we lucked out having you as a guest today. Had no clue that we were.
I'm following you, Luis. I'm following the community.
I know.
I'm just on
You
the
did
side.
send me an email a while ago, and I haven't replied to it. What happens in my inbox is whenever I want to send a quality reply back to somebody, it always ends up just sitting there. Because it's easy for me to go, hey, blah, 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 and then send it off. But then if I'm like, okay, I got to sit down and write an email back to Ray, that it has like more than 2 sentences, and they end up going unanswered. So I'm sorry about that, Ray.
Don't worry about that.
Your email is still in my inbox. Okay, I want to ask a couple questions here because we just got a few minutes left in this wonderful conversation we've been having this morning. But Darcy's asking, what's the most valuable tool that enables learning in the flow of work? And what's the second most valuable tool? I'm just saying that message, Kristen. That's great. So, folks, what do you think? The most valuable tool that enables learning in the flow of work. Let's start with that one. What is the most valuable tool that enables learning in the flow of work? Kristen is saying Slack. Oh, definitely messaging.
Slack. I love that.
Yeah, and Darcy's saying, sounds like it might be communication tools instead of authoring. And Jack's saying collaboration. Let's see. Kim is a fan of DuckDuckGo. And I was wondering about that too, for workflow learning. I mean, is search really, is that a workflow, is that a tool for learning in the flow of work? And if that's the case, then that's pretty much something everybody does. And Josh Burson just managed to just shine a light on this terminology and got tons of content kudos for it.
Yeah, the real problem we have is again the Jeffrey Lube effect. So thinking about Slack, we're thinking about Teams, we're thinking about all sorts of tools that we can work together. I think my invitation would be there will be no perfect tool. In fact, there's no one tool that will claim they can help in the workflow. And my invitation to you would be to think about what does your worker need. If they need specific solution that is you already have a repository of answers, give them a powerful search engine that will classify or give them a chatbot or an AI system. If they are troubleshooting and they have complex problems, you encourage to develop groups so that they can have small groups monitoring, mentoring, and the like. So you design your workflow solution based on the nature of your problem. There is no one tool that you do that. Now, I'm saying this to you. I have a software called Situation Expert because I've been racking my brain on this one. We call Situation Expert. It's got to be eclectic. It's got to be allow the learners where to find it. But there's no one tool that will respond to that, which is kind of good because it tells us that there's no one tool that can solve all our problems. You have to hodgepodge it and hack it together. You can find the right solutions, right?
Right. And and I love that your background, having written a book on micro learning and now you're focused on workflow learning, you probably have some insight into this that is absolutely really, incredibly powerful. But what I do find very compelling is in the chat, a lot of the focus about learning in the flow of work, the type of tool tends to be, we're talking about collaboration, talking about managers and peers, and that is one of the reasons why this community exists, is because this is actually supposed to be a resource for other people to be able to solve their problems as in their career and become better at what they do. So, is that the case? Is community part of a?
It is. It is, Luis. One of the most powerful thing in learning. People call it collaboration. You know how I call it? Conversation. We need to encourage conversation between people, whatever tool they use, because that's how we leverage everybody's experiences. It's almost like going to the cooler. I remember our old friend Jay Cross, he would say, go to the cooler, hey, what's new today? How did you fix the problem, etc. And the like. Let me tell you a quick case study. I have a manager approached me one day and said, Ray, I told my boss I will never do training programs anymore. And the boss said, what do you mean? This is what I will do, boss. I will call them, 15 people in a room, and I will not talk, I will not lecture, I will not have PowerPoint. I will just ask them, by the way, anybody wants to share a problem and how they solved it. That's it. That's the conversation. And after 30 minutes and then 45 minutes, they learn more in that conversation that I would have lectured to them. Which is like Slack, which is like what your community is doing, right, Luis?
Right.
This is but the problem I have with words like conversations, it's very complex. We have so many steps of doing it. It's just basically talking to people in a most productive way.
Right.
Very powerful.
It is powerful. And I do want, Jack was going to be in today, couldn't get his audio working, and we're going to be wrapping up here in a second. But Jack, I would love to follow up this to talk more about workflow learning and collaboration, and hit it from that direction too. And with that, we got our we did our 30 minutes. I am absolutely honored, Ray, for you to have popped in today. Thank you so much. I was hoping for this because I was struggling a little bit about how today was going to go, because I was a little all over the place. I had so many questions, and you were perfect for answering all of them. And I want to thank everyone for joining us this Friday. Let's see, today and next week. I don't know if you guys have seen the calendar. I put out another call out for member showcases. So we've got a ton of showcases set up. Working on 3 more events to wrap up this year. So we've got lots of activity ahead. This is going to be a busy fall for TLDC. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody around. And with that, everyone, have a great weekend. Ray, I'm going to make this up to you, so we'll do some more stuff. I want to get you out here to the TLDC folks a little bit more. So
thanks, everybody. Soon, okay, thanks, Luis.
All right, bye, everyone.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.